Okay, so I'm a little late on reviewing Deadpool and Wolverine, and I decided not to watch it on opening day. I decided to wait a couple of days, and unfortunately, I got like 99% of everything spoiled for me. And because of this, I didn't get to enjoy the impact of some of the surprises in this film. And it wasn't even like I was looking for it, it was just scrolling through on Twix, what I call Twitter X. Just like, bam, there's a spoiler of someone with shitty cell phone reception recording the screen, and it's like, that's kind of unfortunate. So thankfully for you, if you're watching this, I'm going to keep this spoiler free. But I'm a tad late on the review, it's not going to get quite as many clicks, so I decided to do something a little different today. Today, while I am going to be reviewing Deadpool and Wolverine, I'm also going to be kind of looking at, is this movie going to save the MCU? Kind of my thoughts on some of the future announcements that they've made, and just looking at kind of some of the blunders they've done in the past couple of years. I will kind of have the first section of the review, so if you're just interested in the review, you can use the chapters down below, use the first section, and even when I'm going over some of the future announcements, I'm still going to refrain from spoiling anything that was revealed in this film. So, let's fucking go.
This is what I'm talking about. Big slow motion action sequence. Who knows if you live or die? Let's fucking go.
Let's fucking go.
Okay, so initially, I did not want to see this movie simply because the MCU burnt all of the goodwill bridges that I had with it. I was a diehard fan of the MCU starting well before 2008 with Marvel movies, but when 2008 came along and the first Iron Man came out, and then the tease of the build up to the Avengers, like, I was locked in for the ride, and for the next 10 years, I absolutely loved everything the MCU, I always said DCU, everything the MCU put out. Even the weaker chapters like Captain Marvel and Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2 is kind of like the weakest chapter of the first 10 years in my opinion. I still own it, I still watch it. It was kind of like the same rule as pizza. Even when it's not that good, it's still pretty good. And so after Endgame, it just started nosediving down into an early grave, and then with all of like the bad projects they were coming out with, I still kind of had faith in the franchise of the MCU simply because I knew when the two characters I was really, really looking forward to came out, they were going to do them right. And that was Doctor Doom and Namor. And when the trailer released for Black Panther 2, I was like, I'm out. Like, never before in cinema history have you ever seen the bastardization of a character like you saw with Namor in Black Panther 2. They changed every aspect of that character. The only thing that was authentic to the original comic books was the fact that he had wings on his feet. But everything else was changed for the worse. And when I saw that, I was like, that's it, I'm done. I'm done with MCU because they are not going to take me seriously. They're not going to treat the source material with respect. They're going to ruin Doctor Doom. They're going to ruin Silver Surfer. They're going to ruin all the characters that I've been waiting to see. And there was a few things that came along after that, like Guardians of the Galaxy Part 3. I kind of gave that a chance. I didn't watch it at the theaters though, but when it came out to video and streaming, I watched it. It's like, yeah, it was pretty decent because it was the same guy who wrote and directed the first two. And yeah, it was just as decent as the first two. So like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was a solid movie, and I'll probably buy it eventually. But like everything else was just mediocre at best and like complete unwatchable dog shit at worst. There's not a single thing on Disney Plus that's MCU related that I enjoyed. There's like one episode of What If that I actually really liked. Okay, to be fair, there's a couple of episodes, but for the most part, most of that show was utter trash. And so I was not looking forward to Deadpool or Wolverine, or Deadpool and Wolverine, and my girlfriend wanted to see it, and it's like, okay, I'll try talking myself into it. And then when I had one cameo spoiled for me of a character I didn't think was ever going to be brought back, it was just like, okay, I'll watch it. And so, going into this movie, from beginning to end, something weird happened. The entire movie, I had a smile on my face. Last time I had that with an MCU movie was maybe Endgame, most definitely Infinity War. Like, with Avengers Infinity War, I had a smile on my face throughout the entire movie. Endgame, I would say, like, most of it, I had a smile on my face throughout it. There was a few, like, parts, it's like, it kind of slowed down and whatnot. Nothing terrible in the movie. Even Spider-Man No Way Home, I wouldn't say that I had a smile on my face throughout the entire movie. It was a fun movie, but it wasn't like that magic happened. And with this movie, I kind of had that magic happen where I'm just like nodding along with the movie. And don't get me wrong, there are issues with this movie. Case in point, there's some serious plot holes, especially with the narrative. Some of the, like, story writing, it's like you kind of missed some parts, you kind of jumped over some things, you're kind of like gluing stuff together and not letting it seal. Honestly, if I was writing this, I would have written certain aspects of the story differently while trying to keep a lot of the core elements, because overall the story is okay, but there's just some, like, rough issues with how certain scenes play out, certain characters are used and whatnot. And so it's not enough to say don't watch it, but it's just like, this movie is a mess. Don't get me wrong. There were some messy aspects to it. Also, if I'm being honest, there are some crude jokes in this movie that don't land for me. I've always kind of described it as there's three kinds of Deadpool. There's kiddie Deadpool, the type of Deadpool you see with, like, Marvel Superhero Squad that's safe for kids. There's teenage Deadpool, there's some adult jokes, but for the most part, it's like pop culture references and him breaking the fourth wall. And then there is adult Deadpool, like just raunchy joke after raunchy joke. It's like watching the worst of Judd Apatow movies. And I felt like the first Deadpool was the raunchy adult Deadpool. And then the second Deadpool was more like the teenage Deadpool with a flair of the raunchy Deadpool. In this movie, it's a little bit more of the adult Deadpool with still a healthy slathering of the teenage Deadpool. I know it's a weird kind of explanation of the character, but that's just kind of how I've always seen it. And when Deadpool's the teenage Deadpool, he's perfect. I mean, he's excellent. I had a blast every time I was getting that teenage Deadpool. But when he was doing the adult Deadpool, like I said, it's like watching the worst parts of a Judd Apatow movie. And I'm not a fan of Judd Apatow movies. Another thing is, like, there was a period in this movie where I literally, like, asked myself, is Deadpool gay? Because he's making a lot of, like, homosexual related jokes towards other characters. And then there's a scene where they bring in, like, the character, or the actress, I can't remember her name, but, like, the actress who plays his girlfriend in the first two, she pops up, it's like, oh yeah, he's actually in a relationship with her. Could have fooled me with some of the jokes he was making, but that didn't ruin the movie. If you go in this understanding that there's going to be some really crude jokes, you'll be fine. But, like, the two best parts of this movie are the cameos and the attention to respect and detail to comic book lore, especially with some of the costumes. Like, there's a lot of cameos, not only of unique characters unto themselves, but of variations of one character. And when you see some of those variations, some of the costumes on those variations, even though they're in the movie for like 20 seconds, is mind-blowing. It's just like, holy shit, that is exactly like that issue. And they put so much work into that, and it's only in the movie for like 20 seconds. So many comic book references. It is amazing. Like, if you have ever read Marvel Comics pertaining to some of the characters in this movie, you're going to be blown away by, like, just finally you're getting a Marvel superhero movie that doesn't try changing things to fit with a more modern aesthetic. It's like, no, screw it. We're doing this ridiculous looking costume from the 80s, as ridiculous as it looks, we're going to bring it to the big screen. And with that was like one of the things that made me smile every time I saw a comic book accurate recreation. I mean, make no mistake about this. You're not going to be watching a movie. You're going to be watching a comic book with this. And that's something I feel the MCU has lost track of. A lot of the MCU movies and shows, I don't feel like you're watching a comic book. I feel like you're watching someone who has heard of this comic and they want to make a story for modern audiences. And they're just taking some elements from it. And with this, it's like, no, screw that. We are going to adapt these classic stories into this Frankenstein's monster of a new story. And is it messy? Absolutely. But is it amazing? Absolutely. And then talking about, like, the elephant in the room, Hugh Jackman. He was great. One, he still got it. Okay? I mean, like, he got physically ready for this role. There's a couple of shirtless scenes with Hugh Jackman, and it doesn't look like they wheeled out an 80-year-old guy. It looks like Hugh Jackman took this shit seriously, and he hit the gym. And even acting-wise, some of the best scenes of Wolverine are in this movie in terms of acting. And, like, there's this one scene with Wolverine and Deadpool talking in a car, and Wolverine just lets him have it, and, like, Hugh Jackman just freaking kills the scene. And, like, just when this movie works, it works great. A couple of the other issues I have with this movie is, like, with one of the main antagonists. There's a couple of antagonists. One, there's, like, barely any development with them. And then the other antagonist, she doesn't fall into the usual MCU girl boss. I just feel like they didn't develop her in a couple areas enough. She's actually a really solid character. I wish more MCU female characters were like this one. But, if I'm being honest, it's just like, they cut some corners, especially in the third act. It's like, okay, I guess that works. I don't see how she would have jumped from here to here. And I also felt like the filmmakers didn't know which lane they wanted to go with her. In one instance, it felt like they were going to try and do one thing with this character, and in another instance, they decided to just go the opposite direction. And it's like, I kind of felt like saying, guys, with this character, pick a lane, okay? Like just some narrative issues with this. But yeah, like, in the end, I really enjoyed Deadpool and Wolverine. I was not expecting this to be this good. I felt like this was something I would have seen in the first 10 years of Marvel. And another refreshing thing is I never felt like it was preaching to me once. I didn't feel like a character turned to the camera and go, are you doing enough to solve this issue right now? It literally, here's the synopsis of the movie. Ryan Reynolds took a bunch of his toys, threw them on the floor of his room, and just started playing Smash together. And does that sound like a weird time? Yes, this is a weird movie. But you know what? Sometimes that's what we need. And did I turn my brain off with this movie? Absolutely. Did I enjoy turning my brain off with this movie? Absolutely. Every now and then, you need a movie that doesn't make you think. You can just turn your brain off. And that's one of the reasons why I enjoy movies like Michael Bay films, okay? Sometimes you just need to see some explosions, turn your brain off, and see some really cool shots. Speaking of shots, while a lot of people think they're gimmicks now, I've always enjoyed them. There's a really cool one-shot take in the third act of this movie. I absolutely love it, and I'm glad they tried it. And so, yeah, honestly, I felt this movie was excellent. Does it have problems? Absolutely. Is it perfect? No. Could this have been better? Yeah. But if you're just looking for a fun time at the theater, seeing a bunch of really awesome cameos, some of which you never thought you were ever going to see on the big screen again, absolutely go check this movie out. So, now that that review is out of the way, does Deadpool and Wolverine save the MCU? I doubt it. Because, look, Disney has been really suffering with some of their decisions. Star Wars is in the toilet right now with the bitter feuding that's going on with the Acolyte. Marvel has been in the gutter. Hell, I think Jamie Lee Curtis even recently said in an interview, someone asked her what phase of Marvel is on now, and she said bad. And then she turned around and apologized for that. No, Jamie, you are absolutely right. Marvel is in a bad phase right now. Like, the whole thing with Kang the Conqueror, that could have been cool, but they never handled it right. Multiverses, it's kind of in vogue right now to say that multiverses don't work, they're lazy storytelling. I kind of disagree with that. I think if done right, multiverses could really work. The problem is, Marvel has not done multiverses right at all. They just use it as an excuse to have 27 costume variations of a character. This movie's guilty of that. And, like, in terms of, like, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, that was all that was. You didn't really get any interesting concepts introduced in the Multiverse of Madness, and among the other issues that that movie has. And this movie does properly poke fun at multiverses, saying, guys, this is lazy writing, and this movie does that. I mean, it's like, you know, the pot calling the kettle black, but it's very self-aware. There's some really great self-aware jokes in this. But can this save the MCU? Well, one, it depends on how Marvel reacts to this movie. I hear some people saying that they're not getting a lesson because apparently in comics, I haven't really been reading a lot of Marvel comics lately, but apparently there's a new Deadpool comic line where the original Deadpool is killed off and he's replaced by a permanent female Deadpool, and that's now going to be Deadpool. I don't know if this is actually the case or if it's someone overinflating a limited run series. Again, I haven't been reading comics a lot lately, but if that is the case and it is the new permanent Deadpool, Marvel hasn't got the point, okay? People are not against female superheroes. Actually, there are some really awesome female superheroes out there. What people are against are just lazy shell swaps of already established heroes. It's like Thor. Well, we'll do a female Thor. Hawkeye, we'll do a female Hawkeye. Black Panther, we'll do a female Black Panther. I mean, it's just like, guys, a little bit more creativity. The X-Men have plenty of unique, original female characters in that group that weren't their own movies, well, not shows. Disney can't do a Marvel show, but like their own stories. And so, people aren't against female characters. I mean, look at Wonder Woman. When that movie came out, it was a box office success, and no one was really criticizing it, because it's like, look, there was no Wonder Man that Wonder Woman was a knockoff of. There was only Wonder Woman, and so it makes sense. And Marvel needs to start doing more original female characters if they want to get more female characters in. When you just do a copy and paste swap of Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, it's just lazy. And I don't know if Marvel is going to get that. But like, looking at some of the future projects coming down the pipeline, like Agatha, it's a spin-off of one of the worst shows I've ever seen, WandaVision. Like, if you want to see my thoughts on WandaVision, like, I have a very, very old review of WandaVision that just, like, that was such a horrific experience for me. I would rather watch like 25 really bad movies than ever watch WandaVision again. That's how bad that movie was. And unfortunately, the guy who directed all 9 episodes of WandaVision is directing the new Fantastic Four movie. So that automatically right there, like, the only way I'm watching the new Fantastic Four movie is if everyone and their mother says that, oh yeah, this is faithful to the comics and it's amazing, it's not stupid at all. I don't think that's going to be the case, though. And speaking of Fantastic Four, at San Diego Comic-Con recently, they did just do like this huge panel. I saw the leaked footage. I will admit, a lot of the aesthetics to that trailer looked kind of good, from the costuming to like the retro 1950s and 60s future aesthetic. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of aspects to the Fantastic Four movie that do kind of look promising. I like most of the cast except for the guy playing Ben Grimm and Pedro Pascal. So I like half the cast. The only objection I have to the guy playing Ben Grimm is nothing he's done. It's not his acting ability. It's just the fact that in the MCU, that actor has already played Microchip from The Punisher. And so it's kind of weird that they said Punisher is canon with the MCU, and yet they're having that actor play Ben Grimm. Now, have Micro and the Thing ever crossed paths in the comics? Possibly. I haven't read enough comics to tell you definitively yes, but you get some narrative issues when you have one character playing two different characters in the same universe. And yes, I will get to the big one in a little bit. But I mean, with the Fantastic Four, there's just some things that really are a big, like, concerning red flag for me. And one is the fact that the main villain they're doing with the first outing of the Fantastic Four is Galactus. And yes, I'm glad that Galactus is not a smoke monster. That quick little shot of Galactus looking through the windows of the Baxter building is kind of exciting, but at the same time, the villain is kind of too big for the first outing of the first family of Marvel. Okay, if I was making the Fantastic Four, I would have the villain for the first movie be like Mole Man, or a lesser tier character, much like how you saw them handle the Christian Bale Dark Knight trilogy. In the first movie, Batman Begins, the main villain is Ra's al Ghul and the League of Shadows, or the League of Assassins, depending on comic book, because in comic books it's the League of Assassins and Ra's al Ghul, and in the movie it was Ra's al Ghul and the League of Shadows. That's not the heaviest hitter that Batman's ever gone up against, and it was kind of like perfect because it allowed the audience to focus more on Bruce Wayne and Batman, and allowed us to get introduced to that character. And then with the second Batman movie, The Dark Knight, Bruce Wayne, while still there, was kind of set off to the side, and the main focus was the heavy hitter, the Joker. And that movie trilogy is considered like one of the best in recent history, especially with The Dark Knight. I know a lot of people like to shit on The Dark Knight Rises. I had fun with it. I liked Bane. I liked a lot of what they did with it. Ending was a little rough, but, you know, overall, I did enjoy it. But, like, just looking at those first two movies, that's kind of how they need to handle the Fantastic Four. You have the first movie just focus on the four family members. You have a kind of disposable film for the first movie. Maybe a post-credit tease for the second film. All about Doctor Doom. And they recently announced that Robert Downey Jr. is going to be playing Doctor Doom in Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret War. I assume he would be back in Avengers Secret Wars, especially since not only are Robert Downey Jr. is going to be in both those, but also they got the Russo brothers back to direct those two movies. If you don't know who they are, they directed Avengers Infinity War, Endgame, Captain America the Winter Soldier, and Captain America Civil War. All four movies, fantastic films. So the fact that they got those directors back and Robert Downey Jr. back is kind of intriguing. But speaking of Robert Downey Jr., I don't know what to make of that. Like, honestly, he's a great actor, and if they do certain things right, it could work amazing. The problem is, Marvel has a serious issue with actors having to show their face. It's a big problem in Hollywood. There's some really fantastic videos on YouTube talking about this, but if you look at Marvel films, anytime the character is actually like speaking, they have like this nanotech that just magically takes the helmet away so you can see the actor's face. Once you see it and it's explained to you, it's really distracting. It's like, okay guys, come on. I don't think this would ever happen. And there is kind of like a beauty to characters that never show their face. Just look at the movie Dread, or you look at The Mandalorian Season 1, where only once did Pedro Pascal take his helmet off. I'll get back to Fantastic Four in a minute, but I might as well get the Robert Downey Jr. thing out of the way. So if it's revealed that like Robert Downey Jr., once the helmet goes on, you never see his face again, that could work. Especially since in comic book lore, Doctor Doom cannot take the helmet off because he put it on his face when it was red hot, and it literally melted to his face. And so, because of that, like, anytime I see them talking about Doctor Doom, like the Tim Story Fantastic Four films with Chris Evans, Doctor Doom, he never had the helmet on but a few scenes, and you always saw this cable TV model, like, showing his face. And it's like, that's not Doctor Doom. And then 2015's Fantastic Fan Four Stick, whatever that wasn't Doctor Doom. And so, like, if Marvel does Doctor Doom, they need to do it right, because I don't want to see the guy's face. I want to see the helmet. I want to see that, and I don't want to see Robert Downey Jr.'s face non-stop. You take it off once or twice in the movie, okay, I can live with that. But Doctor Doom really needs to go with that face melting aesthetic, because it's one of the fascinating things about the character, in my opinion. And like, Doctor Doom is such a heavy hitter. I would say he's probably one of the biggest villains in Marvel, because with the comic books, Doctor Doom literally fought everyone. He wasn't just a Fantastic Four villain. He fought Captain America, he fought the Avengers, he fought Thor, he fought Doctor Strange. One could even make the argument that at a certain point in the comic books, Doctor Doom was more of a Doctor Strange villain than he was a Fantastic Four villain, because Doctor Doom, first off, had no superpowers. He wasn't born with superpowers, and after he couldn't beat the Fantastic Four with his intellect, he started learning magic and the mystic arts, and that's how he got introduced into fighting Doctor Strange, which would be a really awesome Doctor Strange movie. Doctor Strange versus Doctor Doom. Doctor versus Doctor. I don't know if Marvel is smart enough to do that, but that would be a really awesome fourth Doctor Strange film. And like, that's one thing that I want to see with Doctor Doom when he's first introduced, is I just want it to be the threat is his intellect. There's a lot of times they introduce a villain, Disney has a real problem with this. You get this villain, like, taking, for example, General Thrawn from Star Wars. In the like extended books, he was like this brilliant tactician, and from what I've heard in Ahsoka, he's a buffoon, an idiot. And if they do that with Doctor Doom, it's going to fail. First outing for Doctor Doom, he should be literally like, just, he's such an insane genius that people with superpowers can't beat him. And that'd be a great stepping stone to showing how big of a threat this one person can be to the entire Avengers. And that would be amazing. I don't know if Marvel's going to do that or not. And so, with the Robert Downey Jr. reveal, look, it's cool that he's back because he's a solid actor. I think a lot of people were hoping that he came back as Iron Man in some way, but then that would have negated the ending to Endgame. For those of you that haven't seen it, I don't want to spoil it. But I'm not immediately ready to say, oh, this is so terrible. I would have picked probably 100 other people before considering Robert Downey Jr. But going back to the Fantastic Four, I'm concerned with the fact that they're having Galactus be the big bad for Fantastic Four, because one, it's such a huge opponent. I mean, like, Galactus is an Avengers level threat villain, and you're going to negate that to just the first outing of the Fantastic Four, and if they don't beat him, then, you know, the Earth's dead. And so, of course, if they beat him, then he's just going to be a throwaway villain. This is a problem that they had with Kang. He lost every single appearance he showed up in. And so, by the time they were still doing Kang before they fired the actor, and why they didn't recast him, I don't know. But by the time they got to the end of that run, it's like Kane's not that big of a threat because he's lost every single time. That's why Kylo Ren wasn't that intimidating in the Star Wars films, because he always lost to Rey. And another thing that is like a huge red flag for me is the fact that they gender swapped the Silver Surfer with a female variant that was in a limited, like, I think it was like a 2-issue run or like a 4-issue run, and like that's the reasoning for having the first appearance of the Silver Surfer a woman. And like, look, you want to do a female Herald of Galactus for the first outing? 1 second. They should have done Nova, okay? Nova was like the female Herald of Galactus after Silver Surfer left. She's this like gold body, fiery hair, like I think she was even human at one point, and she became the new Herald of Galactus. And I had this toy from my childhood. It was always like one of my favorite toys, and admittedly it was like one of my first childhood crushes. Nothing dirty or like that. It was just, as a little kid, it's like, oh wow, she's pretty. But like, yeah, I still have this on my shelf, and like, this would have been such a smart move for Marvel to do. If you're going to do a female Herald, do Nova. Okay, that would have been so awesome. It would have made fans go, oh, interesting. So instead of Silver Surfer coming first, Nova came first. That'd be really interesting. And there's so many possibilities you could have done with this. Instead of having Earth happen after Norman Rad's planet, you could have had Earth happen before. Somehow Nova gets defeated. Galactus is looking for a new Herald. He comes across Norman Rad's planet, and that's how you get the original comic accurate Silver Surfer. That could have been awesome. Instead, they're playing their games. And so, is there hope for the MCU? Maybe. It's like, I don't have any hope for the Captain America Brave New World movie, or New World Order. I can't remember what it's called, but I like Anthony Mackie. I like Harrison Ford. I like the look of the movie. It feels more like an espionage movie. But the problem is, unless something's changed, they have the same writer working on that worked on Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And with my review on that, I established that the writer did not understand Captain America. Because in that show, there's literally a scene where someone was saying, Captain America was never a good thing. It was only Steve Rogers. Captain America has always been an evil thing. And look, you've probably seen this before. I have an actual metal Captain America shield, okay? Captain America, the idea, the essence of Captain America has always been that it doesn't matter who is Captain America. Anyone can be Captain America. Captain America, the idea of Captain America is you can do better. You can go that extra mile. You can go that foot farther. You can push yourself to limits you never even saw before. That is the idea of Captain America. And the writers of that show did not understand the idea of Captain America. And so when I heard that they were getting the same writer for Falcon and Winter Soldier for this movie, it was like, yeah, I'm not interested. Because if you don't understand the concept of the character you're adapting into a film, you're going to fail. Now, looking at the box office numbers of Deadpool and Wolverine, this is definitely going to get a sequel. Because at the time of this recording, which is only about a week after it came out, the box office number is, let me get this right, $630,429,906. In a week, it has almost made $1 billion. It has crossed the halfway point to getting to $1 billion. So Marvel most likely is going to go to Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman and just wheel in a giant car of money. It's like, we want another one. And so I would say that probably this is getting a sequel, because this has made so much money so fast, and maybe Marvel might have gone through their thick heads. We need to do this instead of the Eternals. We need to do this instead of Echo. We need to do this instead of She-Hulk. Okay? Because with this, people have fun. With this, people are laughing, they're smiling, they're having a good old time. With those, people are cringing, they're wincing, they're turning off, they're not even finishing them. And so, now, it all kind of depends if Hugh Jackman feels like he has another one in him. They made several jokes in this movie about how Marvel's going to make you do this till you're 90. You know, I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if Hugh Jackman's up for that, because one of the reasons why he left with Logan was he was just saying, I can't keep putting my body through this. I kill myself at the gym every time I do one of these roles, and I don't know if that's healthy for me anymore. And so he took a nice break, did this again. I don't know if he's going to be able to go right back to the gym to keep in that shape and do this another 2, another 3, another 4 times. Especially since they want to start the X-Men in the MCU, and I don't know if Hugh Jackman's going to be able to carry the torch at Wolverine to like 2030. I mean, you know, the guy is over the halfway point in his life, and look, I said earlier, he looks great in this movie. He hit the gym. He got his body in that peak Wolverine physique. I don't know if he's going to be able to keep that up. And I wouldn't blame him if he couldn't, okay? He's given us how many movies? Okay, so like, if the guy said, I can't do this anymore, Deadpool and Wolverine was kind of the last straw for me, I don't think anyone would go, boo! It's like, everyone like, I fully understand, completely, 100%. Like, I'm amazed you did this, man. So has Deadpool and Wolverine saved Marvel? I don't know. It's looking hopeful. I'll say that. With some of the director choices, with some of the casting choices, it looks hopeful. But there's still a lot of red flags left around. So anyway, that's been my thoughts on, has Deadpool Wolverine saved the MCU? What do you guys think? Say it off in the comments down below. Maybe you have some thoughts I didn't bring up yet. I'd love to hear them. My name's Chris O'Connell with Lemon Reviews, and that will be all for today.